So would love to start out if anybody is brave enough to share if they've got a win of the week. Would love to hear about it. Anybody here? Felipe, Patrick, Norm, I know you're around there somewhere.
So I don't know if this is a win, I guess. As far as the business part of it, it is. Like I spoke to Bryce the other day about it when we met. We were having issues with one of the labor employees that we were working with. I remember we talked about it here as well, constantly asking for raises and not
Right.
not performing like the other employees were. And I guess the win on the business side is that we don't have to worry about his salary anymore. We had to let him go, and I guess that's a win on my book because
Yeah, you're no longer having to deal with that. That's a win
don't
for
have
you.
to deal with that. So unfortunately, we had to let him go, but I guess we're running smooth now without having that pressure on top from him all the time, trying to get every week or every couple of weeks asking for a raise and not properly performing and having to go back and redo the work and everything. So I guess I call that a win.
Yes, that's a huge win. That's something that we love to teach here is, through our hiring process, we want you to be able to, hire and fire with confidence. And a lot of times, sometimes you do have to let somebody go before you have somebody to come in to replace them. And it sounds like that was definitely the right move for you. And so I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing, Felipe. Anybody else have a win that they would like to share?
As someone comes up with their win, because I would hope for at least one more. I want to brag about two of my clients here this week who couldn't make it here today. First is Gary of GDK Construction. He actually did $275,000 in total revenue last year, and he already has $400,000 worth of work booked. Now I asked him, I was like, well, Gary, we're going to do more than $400,000 this year, right? And he said, well, yeah, I just need to hire some people to knock out that work, and then we can do much more than that. So right now we're one issue to the next, and that's already huge. So GDK just went from 275 to well over 400,000. And then we can clap a little bit for that.
Yes, that's awesome. But I really appreciate you guys sharing. If you have a win and we didn't get to it, type it in the chat. At least tell your coach. Not only do we like to be able to share that with other clients, but makes us feel good too. Us who are talking to you guys, and we don't get to hear every single win. And so if you have a win, didn't get to share, please send it in the chat. But I'm going to let us move on with our meeting here. If we want to go ahead and start sharing the slides and get going.
So we went through wins. We're going to go through knowing your value here today. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute, but that's the teaser, know your value. The next thing is the applicable skill, which is going to be how to adjust your pricing. It's always like, when do I adjust it? How do I adjust it? Should I adjust it? And then we're going to do it now. So we're going to show you how you can do a pricing evaluation. And then we're going to have a Q&A session. So getting right into it. Oh my, I just skipped the slide. Know your value. There you go. I was really wanted to show you. I worked really hard on that. All right, I want to ask you a question here. And this is more rhetorical. Have an inner dialogue with yourself right now. Are you charging a fair price? I'm letting that sink in here right now. Are you charging a fair price?
Show of hands. Will anybody speak up at all and say, yes, I feel confident in my pricing, or no, I feel like I might have some wiggle room?
Well, it's kind of a trick question, I'll be honest. Most people hear that and they're saying, yes, I am fair to customers. I promise. I promise I'm fair to customers. I'm charging a fair price. Here's my real question. Are you charging a fair price to yourself? Most people are so concerned about being fair to customers that they forget to be fair to themselves. So that's kind of what I want to get into right now is you've got to know your value. You've got to know what you're worth so that you can charge what you're worth. And sometimes when people say charge what you're worth, that's the biggest BS I've ever heard. You know, I'm not talking about your self-worth, because you're worth $1 million. Actually, you can't put a price on that. That was a huge mistake. You can't put a price on that, but you charge what you're worth in the service you provide. Know the quality that you provide, if it is quality, and then actually charge what it's worth. So, just like I said, most business owners are not fair with themselves, and it's so common that they're so concerned about being fair with customers that they forget about themselves. So it's very common here that the typical business owner, no matter the service or product, that they undervalue the service that they perform for customers. Here's something I like to say a lot. A premium service needs to be charged at a premium price. You know, most clients I talk to on a daily basis, they really take pride in the work that they do. And not only they take pride, because you can take pride in total, you know, low quality, but they know for a fact that they're better than their competition. They know for a fact that when a customer calls them and says, "Oh my, first off, you answered the phone. Thank you. I just got done dealing with the crazy plumber who had no idea what he was doing. And finally, I got someone who's qualified." It's like, know that you need to charge for the great, amazing quality you offer and everything else that makes you different. We won't get into that, but your unique value proposition, you need to charge a price that justifies all that you do. You bend over backwards to take care of customers. Here's something that happens a lot as well, is that highly skilled business owners and their experienced technicians, they don't want to come across as, you know, gouging their customers. You know, probably because they've even had negative experiences themselves with other businesses and life that they've interacted with, and they felt like you're being overcharged. Like, man, I never want to come across that way. I'll even, you know, operate without profit. I'll be the nonprofit plumber just so everyone knows that I'm not that guy. And it can be a fear, maybe even subconsciously, you don't even realize it's there, that you're worried about charging an extra $1 or adding an extra fee. And there's ways to work with that, but don't be afraid of that. The next thing is, and we don't want to gouge our customers, FYI, just side note. The next thing is, it's common for business owners to put off adjusting their price, just in general. You know, just in general, it can be pretty scary. It's uncomfortable to do that if you're not in the habit of doing an annual price adjustment, or you're concerned, how will people respond? And side note here, in just regular days, with standard inflation, you know, it's usually about 3%. If you haven't touched your prices in about 3 years, that's 9% you're leaving on the table. That could be some people's all of their profit right there. So all in all, it's time to revisit your pricing. And usually when I say revisit, 99% of the time that's increase your price. All right, common objections to raising prices. I want to give you some of the common objections I hear all the time, but does someone in here, what is your objection, or an objection you used to have to raising your prices but later did it? Just one or two people here. What objections do you have right now to raise your prices, or something you used to say that you know isn't right anymore?
I think it's just being caught in the mindset of, you know, this is what we used to charge, and people used to push back on this price. So for example, this week I raised my water heater prices by $300, and I haven't had any pushback on it at all, but I was scared to for the longest time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just about going after it sometimes. Did anyone else have objections they used to say to themselves, or current objection about that?
I usually think about the competitive prices, the competition, the other contractors, which I know they're giving out lower numbers, but I blocked that mindset and decided to just raise my prices and get higher profit margins. And then I still have clients coming in and accepting my numbers.
Felipe, you're giving away the secret sauce and I love it. That's exactly it. So we're going to go through those specifics, but here's some common objections I hear. Well, the big guys, they can justify charging more than I do because they have higher marketing costs and overhead expenses. Well, that's a lot. That just means in this case, you have an edge over competitors. You can charge as much, if not more, with being able to get much more profit than they do. Sometimes if you're in a spot where customers are flooding in and you don't even have to spend additional money on ad spend, well, that's a good thing. Don't mean, well, we thought we were going to spend $5,000 on ad spend this week. We didn't. So therefore we're going to reduce our prices to adjust that for you customers. It said no company ever, at least no successful one. Next one is, I'll lose all of my customers. This is an irrational fear. I guarantee you won't. That's all I'll say. Bryce is going to talk more about this. You will not lose your customers. And if you lost one, then they just weren't a good fit. Next one is, well, I already have some people complaining about my prices. Well, you should have some people complaining about your prices. In fact, if no one's ever complaining about your prices, then you're way underpriced. In fact, hang up right now and raise your prices right now. I'm not even kidding. It's that moment where, it can be very questionable sometimes. You worked about 6 or 8 hours to create an estimate for a client, or even just give them a price. And finally, you're on the phone with them, or hopefully you're with them in person presenting this estimate. They see the price and they just go, yes, I'll take it. And you're wondering, okay, why are they acting like they just won the lottery? Am I that low right now? It's kind of a scary interaction to have. So that's something we want to avoid as well. Don't let complaints steer you away. Once again, we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but you've got to have some complaints every once in a while. Otherwise, your people will feel like, they're just winning the lottery with you. So here's a typical scenario that I want to leave you with. And I hear this all the time. Your biggest competitor can charge sometimes more than 30% to 100%, or even much more than that, more than you are. This competitor typically is hiring a barely qualified technician who can easily misdiagnose an issue. Well, it looks like your AC unit isn't working because you just got to get a new one. That's the only solution. I hear that so often, and then suddenly they called another person, and it turns out, well, actually, it was a compressor issue, or it's just a $600 replacement instead of $8,000 to $10,000. And this is happening all the time. They lie about these things. I don't mean you can't offer that option. You should offer multiple options, but don't. These technicians are barely qualified. They're making things up, and they're charging 30 to 100% more than you are. And then they pressure customers just to pay top dollar to replace something they don't even need. Like I just said, this happens time and time again. And I can't stress enough. Just a footnote here. You're allowed to tell a customer the price to replace something. In fact, you should, just so that they can make their own educated decision. But when you're telling them it's the only option when it really isn't, that comes off a little strange. And it's just not honest. And then this person, they can even finally get that top dollar replacement, and then they don't even do it right. Different poor quality issues end up costing you more in the long run. And turns out this kind of competitor, they do such a poor job that they easily have, and I've looked this multiple times, easily have 25 to 100 one-star reviews. Like, well, no, that's not possible. They have a 4.5 rating and 3,000 reviews. Yeah, trust me, that's at least 300 one-star reviews. Do the math. It's absolutely insane. The good thing about these, or what they do very well, is they stay proactive with getting 5-star reviews, which we've talked a lot about. So that's why it's so important to stay ahead of it, because you should have a 4.9 or a 5.0 rating if you're keeping up with it, because you have so many happy customers. So this
here has dealt with competing with the demand for a service that you're trying to provide. and then a handyman comes in there and just lowball quotes. Has anybody ever been in that situation? Raise a hand. Yeah, I see Norm. Norm's a remodeler out of Oklahoma City. I know this is something that him and I have worked with a long time. You're not in the same ball. Then, if somebody wants to work, wants that low quality work, then they're not our customer, and so I know that dealing with those handyman prices is something that a lot of you have dealt with. Can anybody testify to overcoming that? Norm, do you have, a story about how you were maybe more expensive than the other guy, but you still got the job?
It happens all the time for me. I mean, it's ever since I started working with you guys, it's like it became a whole different scenario. So now I've changed my whole philosophy from, get that job to bid high, bid often.
Yep. And you have the lead flow to do it.
So I just bid as many of them as I can possibly bid and just bid high. You're not going to get every job. Just accept that and go for the ones that you can get. Yeah. And just sell yourself. I mean, that's what we do. We just sell that we're a 5-star company. We do quality work, and, we have little things that we do. Like we tell them that, we're not going to ask for that final payment until the final punch list has been checked off and you're happy with everything that's there. So that kind of sometimes can be a little bit of a sore spot, but in general, it works really well for us to get those jobs.
Yeah. You're emphasizing the value that your company brings. That's why you charge higher than that handyman, because this is what you're getting from it. And for those of you who weren't in our meeting last week, we do have that recording. It's all about, your value. And so we'd love for you guys to listen to that. But Rudy, I'll let you take it back. Thank you, Norm, for sharing.
Yeah, just leaving you with this thought is you've got to don't undersell yourself. People are willing to pay a good price for someone would love to pay a great price for someone just like you, if they know they're going to get good work and someone who's honest about what's going on and presenting them options. That goes so far. Any person that I know is willing to pay a premium price for that. All right, Bryce.
Yeah, and this is good. This is exactly how I wanted to start my section of this, because what this is not, guys, is this picture that we're seeing here, where you just got dollar signs in the eyes, right? We're not looking to make money grabs here. We are talking about honestly taking care of yourself and making sure that your company's supported and pricing in a way that makes sense. But we're not talking about, hey, raise your prices because you can, and we want all sorts of money on this. That's not at all what this is. So first thing to start out is understanding, when we talk about adjusting your pricing, we got to understand how your pricing is even put together in the first place. That's something that we're always going to do when we talk about this with anybody. And it's something that you can understand for yourselves. There's 3 main pricing guides or standards or what have you, however you want to call it. And the first, that D on the second line, didn't look like that before, I promise. I put it together nicely. But the first is competitive based pricing. And that's what most of us are probably started with whenever we first started out. You started working for somebody else, you knew what they charged, and that's kind of how you based your pricing whenever you started bidding your own jobs. Yeah, this is what I did at my former company. This is kind of what I want to do. You see what other people are charging, and you either undercut just a little bit to try to win those jobs, or you inflate because you know that you're going to be providing higher quality than them. The second type of pricing standard is market-based pricing. And this is a lot more testing the waters kind of a situation. You think about maybe like an IPO, an initial public offering for a company that goes into the stock market. They guess at what the price they think it's going to be, and then the price of the stock goes up or goes down based on what the market responds to, what people think it's actually worth, or that they place value in it. So you see what the market can handle. And the third is cost-based pricing. You figure out the cost that it takes for you to do that job or that project or whatever it may be. And then you add in a fee or a margin on top of that. So it's important to know kind of how your pricing is based, and it may be kind of a combination of these things. And it's okay to kind of mix and match a little bit. If you start with your cost-based pricing, and then you do some market-based testing. See how the market responds when you change your prices. Or if you started at, what you used to charge at your former company and then it moves, same thing. So I want to ask a couple of people here. For you, when we think about pricing, as business owners, entrepreneurs, listen to tons of podcasts. We know you read tons of books. You're listening to a lot of influential people. What for you thus far has been one of the most influential quotes that you've heard or that kind of resonates or that sticks with you about pricing? Anybody want to volunteer that? What have you heard?
Or if you were to create your own influential quote about pricing, and I'll probably start quoting it too, just a side note.
Yeah, we'll be sure to reference you anytime we use it. Okay, well, maybe no one studied pricing or looked at it or read anything, but for us, Redmond Growth, the most influential quote about pricing is by this guy named Paul Graham. He's kind of an entrepreneurial guru. He started this company called Y Combinator, which is like an incubator for startups. He was one of the founders of Dropbox, Airbnb, so great companies. What he says is you found the market price when buyers complain, but still pay. This is huge because it's so true. You know what the market will take whenever buyers complain, but still pay. Jonathan mentioned it earlier, and it's true, and it's hugely important. If you have nobody complaining about your prices, that should be bells and whistles and alarms going off. Why is no one ever saying anything about what I'm charging? Something's off there. So before we get into some of this evaluation based on what Jonathan was talking about, I wanted to give a couple of points of reality check that Jonathan has covered as well. Most business owners undervalue the value that they create. We don't think about what we're worth because we want to be humble and be thinking about it in the right way. We can go too far to that extreme though. When you become a buyer when you become a buyer more than a seller, you are selling a product, you are selling a value, you are selling a service. So whenever you buy the story of, it's too expensive, I have to cut all these deals, you cut deals into making yourself go bankrupt. And that's not a good thing. I've seen that happen time and time again where, hey, we cut one deal here on this project and we cut another deal here. We find ourselves 2 months down the line with incredibly tight cash flow. We don't know where the money went. Well, it's because we were so friendly and kind that we weren't keeping profit in the business, and it's going to suffocate you. Jonathan mentioned this too. A lot of business owners haven't changed their pricing in years. It should be something that you look at least once a year, if not twice a year, where you evaluate what's going on with everything around with my materials. I mean, the last 2 years, genuinely, we all know, has been a decade condensed down into 2 years as far as how things have changed in the market with pricing, with labor, with really everything. The lumber prices went crazy high and then came back to something normal. Gas
Who
prices.
here is upset that they're paying a little bit more for gas? Who's here dealing with that? Yes, most of you guys are contractors. We know you are on the road constantly. That is something to consider. Take a previous month where gas prices were pretty normal and compare it to what you spent this month or this past month in gas. And you want to consider that when you're looking at your prices and say, hey, this is inflation. Here's the good news. Everybody's pissed that they're paying more in gas. And so if a customer is upset that you're having to charge a little bit more, all you have to tell them is why. Hey, we waited as long as we could. Unfortunately, because of inflation and gas prices, we're having to increase our prices a little bit with hopefully anticipation of this not being forever. But this is what we're having to do in order to be able to pull profit. And people are normally very understanding. Pull the COVID card, pull the gas card. It's not a lie. We're just being open and candid. And so this is what Bryce is talking about. This is something that if you have not looked at your prices since this recent inflation has happened, right after this meeting. Don't worry about the angry customer. Don't worry about the employee that's calling you. Look at your prices and say, do I need to adjust these?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah. The big thing too, and some of the guys that shared earlier, so Felipe, Court, sorry, really appreciate you guys sharing that, because it's true. And hopefully you can trust their experience as well as what we're saying here. A lot of people fear that they're going to lose a ton of clients when they raise their prices. You may have a couple people that are already kind of hesitant about your pricing, but what we have found consistently is that most business owners, whenever we're starting out with them, can increase their pricing by about 20% without losing any customers. It's something to consider, and we'll talk about this more in just a minute. But if your typical service call, if you're a plumber, is $300 and you do a 10% price increase, so it's $330 now. If somebody is going to go and decline the job because of a difference of $30, they are pinching pennies, and that's something that most people honestly won't even think about or blink an eye at. But it feels crazy when we say, hey, 10%, we need to do this increase. Most can do it by 20%. A great example of this, a guy I was working with in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. He's not on this call. He's an electrician. Guy had been around for years, decades, and thought that he was charging the highest price of anybody in his area. Well, we did a thing called mystery shopping, where we just called around to a couple local electricians and, hey, how much does it cost for a panel upgrade? Or, hey, how much per light do you kind of to charge? We found that even though he thought he was actually above where other people were at, he was charging almost half of what his competitors were charging. Almost half. And he was providing the highest quality service because he'd been around the longest. How many people are possibly in that situation? If you have been around for a long time, if your company's been around for a long time and you haven't adjusted pricing, this is a really important thing that we want to do. So I want to take some time here, guys. We're going to go slowly through this part because we need to do some self-evaluation. Obviously, with all the people that are in here, we can't tell you, do this, make some sort of a blanket statement and it be accurate for everybody. So you have to do some self-evaluation here. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, just 6. And I want you guys to genuinely think about this. And for this first one, I actually want some feedback as well. When is the last time that you revisited or adjusted your pricing? Somebody be brave and come up with it. If it's David, Jason, Laura.
Aji, are you feeling brave, Aji? I think pricing something we've talked about here pretty recently.
Yes. I think the last time we actually adjusted our price was when we started with you guys, which has been a while, to be honest with you. And it's good that you guys are bringing this up because this is something that I have been talking to my business partner to adjust our prices because of the material prices going up, the gas prices going up. The biggest problem that I'm finding when it comes to when you adjust your price is when my guys are collecting payment in the field. They feel a little they don't feel confident telling the customer the price.
Yeah.
Nobody likes talking about money. It's been taboo for so long to talk about money, and so that's going to come in with sales training, which is something that we will talk about in the upcoming weeks, and I think there might be a group call that we discussed it, but that is part of it. You, not just you have to be confident in your prices, but you've got to train your team how to be confident in your prices.
Absolutely.
So that's something we can talk about, Aji. I'll put it on our agenda, but thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. What you said about, with the technicians in the team, there's more to adjusting your pricing than just changing your pricing. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so what we'll ask next is, what do you find that your competition charges? And how long ago did you get that understanding? Is it from whenever you first started your company and came from another company and you knew that their pricing was at that time? How recently have you seen potentially somebody else's quote? Or has a customer said, hey, I got this job quoted at this price? You know, what do you find that your competition is charging? What are some ways you can get some feedback on that? And really think about these questions, guys, because this is important. So next one, how is your cash flow? Are you strapped for cash? Is your profit margin becoming thinner and thinner without us realizing, so that you virtually have no profit anymore? You're only charging for materials, and then all of your miscellaneous overhead costs are eating up everything else. If you're really strapped for cash, pricing could be, you know, a part of what's going on there. It's not always just cutting expenses, although that's an important thing to do first too. Do customers ever complain about your prices? Is this a problem? If you really are getting, you know, 50, 60, 70% of the time, people saying, wow, that's way too expensive. Well, maybe we are. Maybe we're at the top end of what we need to be charging. But if it's not really a problem, if it's not the only thing that people ever say, and it's not the majority of what's happening whenever people say no, or if they just go into limbo, then we need to evaluate pricing. Another great way to look at this is thinking about if you're overbooked all the time. If for some reason you're winning a ton of jobs and you're overbooked, you're having to turn them away because we just can't get to it in time, and your cash flow is still strapped, there's an indication as well. And then if you win higher than 80% of your jobs, without question, you need to raise your pricing, because we're going to do all we can to increase and make your sales process really solid so that you can have a high conversion ratio. But no one is a perfect salesman. If you have 100% conversion ratio, that is awesome to feel, but it's not awesome for your business. Genuinely, it is something that should be bells and whistles, alarms, and red flags going off.
It's very easy to sell free. That's my pricing quote. You can use that.
No, that's awesome. Okay, guys. So getting into doing it now, a really important thing to talk about, and I kind of already mentioned it. You know, if we're thinking about this, should I raise my prices? We're not going to make a blanket statement here on what you should or shouldn't do with your pricing. That would be reckless and irresponsible on our part. There are a lot of things that can go into this and that are a part of adjusting your pricing as well, beyond just adjusting your pricing. We talked about it a little bit with Aji and Nicole. Your sales process needs to be enhanced. When you make sales about the value you're providing to a customer rather than the price tag, if you talk about the quality of service that you're bringing, and you talk about the materials that you're going to use on the job, and so on and so forth, you're enhancing your sales process, and that makes it worthy of this price increase along with the quality of what you're doing. So there's more than just raising the prices. You know, we also want to consider the quality check. If we interviewed your last 100 customers, what would they say about the work that you did? What do they actually say? And if you're not getting great feedback, well, then we need to honestly look at the quality of work that we're providing. But most of the time, this isn't a problem. Most of the time, the people that we're working with end up finding that people are giving them great reviews. One, because we talk about Google reviews, but two, they genuinely appreciate the work that was done, and you guys do high quality work. If that's the case, you know, that's important to consider too. We're also talking about profit and loss statements. It's a really important business tool, and your coach, you guys can work through this and look at, you know, what should our overhead percentage margin be? What should our operating expenses margins be? To help us determine, maybe more fine tune what should be going on in terms of pricing. And then also adjusting your pay structure for your company. One of your highest expenses is always going to be your payroll. And so we're huge proponents of merit-based pay. All of this is stuff that, you know, we will talk about, but we don't have time to really cover today. But it is stuff that we are going to talk about in the coming weeks in these group calls about how to do each of these areas as well, because they're all important and they're all related to this. But essentially, guys, if you think you should be raising your prices, ask your coach individually and tell them from the self-evaluation we did a minute ago why you think that is. You know, it's been forever since we raised our prices, or all of our all the jobs that we're bidding, people are accepting. No one's really said anything about our prices in a while. You know, things like that, you know, talk with your coach about it, and we'll get into more specifics. But how do we actually do it? And this is where we'll kind of finish here today. But to not be cliche and just throw out the Nike slogan and say, just do it. There's actually a process here. So what we want to do is kind of the market-based pricing a little bit here. Paul Graham quote, you know you found the market price when buyers complain but still pay. So a great way to start doing this is to test the market a little bit. We're not going to go crazy. We're not going to do crazy amounts. I mentioned earlier, you know, if an average ticket is $300 and you do a 10% increase across the board, then you're only changing your prices really by $30, and that's not a huge thing. Now with remodelers, bigger jobs, you know, we'll think about this some more, but genuinely to just raise your prices a little bit across the board, 10%, and do that kind of as an experiment this week. Keep your ear to the ground. What will happen, even if you feel like people are going to reject that and say, no, like that's crazy, and their eyes just, you know, pop out of their head. Most business owners, remember, can increase their prices by about 20% without losing any customers. The quality of customers you will gain increases. And the reason we say this kind of blanket 10% across the board is because as you're testing your pricing, we don't want to spend 50 hours redoing everything that's not going to stick. So simplicity scales where complexity fails. And that's a good thing to remember for a lot of the stuff that we talk about, a lot of the things that we want to do in a business. Simplicity scales, complexity fails. And of course, in doing this kind of an experiment, you know, just 1 week, 10% price increase, win the customer overall, right? We're not telling you to just hold firm and say nothing. You know, stick with your pricing, sell it confidently because you're worth it. But if you go back to your original pricing, it's no harm and it's no foul to you. And it may even help you win a job that you might not have won earlier. You know, anchoring at a higher price first and then going back to a lower price could win the job anyway. So it's really no harm and no foul if you do this price increase. And just kind of test out the waters there. So that's my piece on the pricing increases here, guys. So any questions, any thoughts, feedback, you know, bring it on.
One thing that I've seen lately is after I raise my prices, a lot of customers or potential clients, they raise their eyebrows and saying, I mean, what's wrong with this price? It's it works when you get in a phone conversation. Give them a budget estimate of how much it's going to cost, and that will tell you if it's a potential client for sure or if it's just someone calling in to get pricing, and they'll not bother you for with other phone calls, with more phone calls trying to get more pricing or different variations of your estimate, you know. So once you have a customer that accepts or tells you, okay, that works with me, then that's a customer that you can think of or spending more time and trying to get them a better or more detailed proposal and all that. So I'm in the process of learning on how to filter out just the tire kickers from actual clients that want to get the job done with quality work.
Yeah. No, that's great, Felipe. And that's something that we didn't really get into. That's kind of even into more of some of the sales process side. Like when you do get that kind of pushback, asking the right kind of questions where, okay, you know, what were you looking to spend on this kind of a project? And then they throw out a number and you can tell them, hey, this is what we can do for that price. Or, you know, this is why it costs this. Yeah, you're right. So that's into the sales process side for sure.
Yeah, something we like to say on that, since no one's jumping in on here, is sales is sorting. So it's determining, hey, how quickly can I determine, is this person a good fit for me or not? And obviously you have to sell your value, but at some point someone's just not a good fit and we don't want to waste our time with them. And that's pretty much what you're saying. So sales is sorting. It's very important.
Okay, well, part of this group coaching is opportunity to ask questions. You guys can always book laser coaching calls. You can always, ask questions during your meetings. But we want to kind of open up the floor in this group coaching for any questions that you guys might have. So you can get a different coach's perspective. You might be able to get a different client's perspective. And so if anybody has a question, it does not have to do with pricing. It can be anything that's kind of been burning in the back of your mind. Would love for you to speak up, either enter it in the chat if you're not able to turn on, your recording, or just unmute and be brave and go ahead and ask. So yes, Brent, love it.
I'll add two things here. And going back to any good comments, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess one thing that I think of when I present an estimate is when a client reacts. I really like the one, you found the market when the client complains, but they still pay. I mean, we just had a client 2 weeks ago. I had to swallow my spit 2 times when I saw your estimate. The client goes, like, he had to gulp twice when he seen our number, but he paid it. Other clients that think we're too high, the little quote I like to think to myself is, don't say that I'm too expensive, just say you can't afford me. I don't know, that's a little fun one that I say to myself. And as far as we're always pushing the limit of raising our prices, seeing what we can charge. We're okay with losing jobs. But what I found a tendency on is we're pretty much open with our clients up front. If you get 2 other estimates through our vetting process, we're already telling them why we're going to be the most expensive. And we usually do come in the most expensive. And what I found a repetition on is when you are the most expensive estimate, it leads the right clients to start to think, it makes them scared to hire the middle guy and the low guy, because they start asking themselves, why in the hell is this guy so expensive? And he's telling me everything he's going to do. Even the middle guy, they start to get scared to hire him because they're wondering, how can we be so far apart from the middle guy and the low guy that they become scared to hire anybody else, because they're really questioning, and they believe us. They want us to do the job, but they want us to be the middle guy. They want to pay the price, but ultimately they pay us because they're scared to hire anyone else, because they're wondering, what did these guys miss? What did they leave out? So I found that tendency of, like, not just being a little bit more than the middle guy, be a lot more than middle guy. And we do well. We're busy. It works. And we're not scared to lose a client. So that's all I got.
Yeah, that's huge. And there's a good question here. I know we got some people chiming in, but I'd like to mention it is, what's the best way to approach the 10% increase with your existing customers? They can get sticker shocks due to previous services due to the new cost. And I'd like to challenge that. I don't see anybody even noticing 10% increase. I really don't. And in fact, I just had a client 2 weeks ago. We had this talk, and I said, let's do 10%. And he said, yeah, let's do it. I'm doing it right now. I'm on House Call Pro. I just hit 10% increase. 2 weeks later, not a single complaint, not a single even notice to the new price. 10% it's a small increment, and just take it one step at a time. But like everyone else has really good advice here. Just be transparent about it. Just tell them, well, it really should be, 20% more expensive, but I didn't want to, surprise you too hard. Gas is really rising, and COVID and all that. Just be transparent with them. But
don't feel obligated to lead with that. We don't want to feel like we have to justify our prices. We want to be confident when we present. And one thing that we went over a couple weeks ago is the one sheet. Without value, the only thing that people are worried about is price. And so this is something that Norm does really, really well over at Spot On Remodeling, is with his sales. process, and making sure that he's emphasizing the value that he's bringing right before he goes over the estimate. And so don't feel like you need to really just the 10% increase, you know. Don't lead with it. Only if somebody is like, oh, well, we've been a customer for 10 years and this is a lot more than the last time we spent. That's when just be open and transparent with them. And that's going to yield you the best results.
That's really good. And the only thing that I would add to that as well is this idea that we don't need to answer the unasked question. Sometimes we put the cart before the horse too often, and we try to say, this might go wrong or this might go wrong. If people do, you know, give you some pushback, you can respond to that, like we've talked about in defaulting and transparency. But in general, you know, you don't have to air out absolutely everything to somebody and go into the conversation saying, I know this is a little bit higher, here's our new price, and then you give that to them. You know, you're giving them an out whenever you approach the situation with that kind of a mentality within your own self, if you're not confident in the quality and the value that you're providing and why you need to do that increase.
Any other questions? Yes, Norm.
So one of the things that I don't even address the price increase. I just put it in there, and if they say anything about it, if they bring it up, then I just tell them, look, you know, ever since this COVID thing started, I can't hire people for the wages I used to hire them for. I can't buy my materials at that cost. You know, everything costs more. It's called inflation. You know, this is where we're at right now. Maybe in the future prices go down, maybe they go up. I don't really know, but this is where we're at now. And I just leave it at that, and they accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, Norm, and everybody's dealing with it.
Yeah, I do the same thing as Norm does. I just let them know straight up like that. And I give them an example as far as material. One of the most common material that fluctuates in prices a lot is 4x8 plywood board, where before you can purchase it at $17, and now you're looking at about $70 per sheet. So I give them that example, say, I mean, a week ago I could buy a sheet of plywood for $17. If you go out there today, you're looking at 3-4 times the cost of that, around $70. So giving them that example, they feel more that the pricing that was provided to them is roughly on par with today's material cost.
Yes, that's great. You know, giving them examples so that we can just put it in perspective, you know, so that they don't feel like you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes or anything. So we are very aware, guys, that this is something that everybody deals with, you know, especially right now, like, you know, like Norm said, over the past 2 years, I feel like more so than ever, prices fluctuating so much and having to constantly be on top of your price book. And so we really do understand that this is, you know, a battle that you all are facing in your business. And so if you need extra support, if you have more questions, laser coaching. If your coach isn't available, book it with one of the other coaches. They can help you too. I promise. You know, bring it up during your next meeting. We want you to feel confident. This is the lifeblood of your business. If we don't have accurate pricing, nothing else that we do is going to matter. And so just really encourage, if we didn't get to your question today, you know, send us an email, book a laser coaching, and just don't, you know, make sure that we're giving you the support that you need. So really appreciate the participation today, guys, and you all making it here. I'm going to let Jonathan Rood close us out. If everybody could unmute. Yes, I saw some people automatically unmuting when I said that, and I'm proud. I'm proud that you guys know what's about to happen. So Rudy, if you want to lead us through it.
We got a couple new faces. A reminder, it's 1, 2, 3, and just say growth on 3 as loud as you can. All right, guys. 1, 2, 3, growth.
Growth.
Yes, you guys have a wonderful week. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out, okay?
Thanks, bye.
Bye.